Okay, today I wanted to, this is a lecture I owed you on lifelong learning, and we're going to talk about graduate school. Sorry about PowerPoint, it's just the easiest way to do this, and hopefully you can hear me okay, and we'll get through this. Just to start out, engineers as a group love to learn. You probably look back in your life, you've probably had some fascination with many things. It's typical of engineers that we like many subjects, many things, science, math, plus a whole host of other things. And so we like learning. And so you've entered into a profession where that's a very positive thing because engineering in and itself is a very broad and deep field, and plus it encompasses and surrounds other fields because they need our stuff. You're in the right place. You love to learn, and so today we're going to talk about how to continue to learn because college is just the start. And so let's go on to that. A couple of things we can do in lifelong learning, self-study, obviously. You're quite capable at this point in your life of being able to learn on your own. Some things I would suggest to you are that you constantly review and improve the fundamental subjects in your area. If you're an electrical engineer, study the things that you feel are most fundamental and study them all. And if you're a computer engineer, you pick the subjects also that you're going to study and work on. There are two methods that I've encountered in my career, one that I use and one that other people use. One of my first engineering mentors when I had my first job was a incredibly methodical reviewer, and he was a mechanical engineer, and he would take all of his key subjects or core subjects in his area, and he would make in the first month, in January, he would say it's thermodynamics month, and he would review the fundamentals of thermodynamics. In February, he would say it's heat transfer month, and he would march through the year like that, just reviewing the fundamentals. Now you go, well, I studied these in college, I know them all. And you really don't. And I'm pretty sure that you felt sketchy about some of your knowledge, haven't understood exactly what you were doing. And so it's not a bad idea to review. And he was, as I said, he was very methodical, and so he would review these pieces of his fundamentals. And one of the things that you'll notice as you go through reviews like this is that it'll make more sense. A lot of times you're going to say things like, why didn't they just say that in the first place? They likely did, the professor or the instructor you got. It's just they weren't quite ready to understand it. The other method, and this is the method I use, I'm not a methodical person, as you may have noticed, but I am a very curious person, and so I use what I call the natural curiosity method. And in this method, you see something and you wonder how it works, or you recall something that you didn't understand before, and you pull out the books and you go through until you understand it better. I took electronics, but I didn't really understand transistors that well, so I'm going to pull out the books and figure out what's really going on with transistors. I want to, so just being curious, just see something, wonder what its function is, and then figure out how to study it. Go through your books. This is the reason you kept all your textbooks, which of course you did, but is so you can pull them out and look. Of course, you have incredibly rich resources available to you now on the internet, YouTube videos, all these kind of things that you can use to extend and expand your knowledge, and projects you work on yourself by yourself at home. All of these things really help you become a better engineer, and this is part of extending and expanding yourself in the field. Of course, there's learning new things. You can learn for breadth. You can poke into other fields. I've spent my entire working career as working in mechanically dominated firms, and where our products were mechanical objects. And so over time, just so that I could converse with the other engineers, I had to learn quite a bit of what they were doing and what they understood. And so you can expand in breadth in that way. One of the advantages of moving into other fields is there's a fair amount of low-hanging fruit in other fields. things that problems that you can see solutions to that they may not be able to see solutions to simply because they don't have your experience. And it's also fun because you get to play in other people's yards and you get to play with their toys and they don't like it. No, I'm just kidding about that. In general, people like it when you're interested in what they are. You can also go deeper into your specific field. You want to know more. You want to be a better engineer. You want to write good software. You have this desire to just be better at what you do. Why do you want to be better at what you do? Well, the fact that you like learning is one of the major reasons. But just to be better at your job, this is where raises come from and those things. And also, most of you likely have interests outside of engineering. I've told young engineers that I've worked with, that I've mentored before, that anything you learn is going to help you be a better engineer because it just increases that pool of knowledge that you have, the opportunities that you can then assemble something new or novel out of that set of that a pool of knowledge that you've built up is pretty high. And I use an example of this. There was in World War II, there was a problem. I think I've talked about the bouncing bomb before, but the reason that the engineer who designed the bouncing bomb, this is from the movie Dam Busters and the book Dam Busters, and so I don't know if you're familiar with that or whether I mentioned it, but look that up if you're curious. The movie Dam Busters, they broke some German dams by a novel design of a bouncing bomb. But the reason he knew about the bouncing bomb because he had read history. And in history, when Lord Nelson or Admiral Nelson defeated the Spanish Armada, one of the strategies they used was they had learned that if they aimed their cannons at the water, that when the cannon went off, it would skip across the surface of the water like a stone, and then it would hit the Spanish ships right at the water line. And if there is no better place in which to sink a ship than to hit it at the water line. And so they learned, and the engineer who did this had studied history, and he knew this. And so he was able to think about this when they needed that weapon in World War II. So I've heard electrical and computer engineering described as a runaway train. Lots of new things fast. And so you expect to spend your life learning. But that's what you like, that's what you enjoy. You're an engineer. And so hopefully you'll be able to do that to your great happiness through the remainder of your career. The next thing I wanted to talk about is graduate school. Just kind of got to talk about some of the motivations for going to graduate school. Why would I want to do this? I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why you don't go to graduate school, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about return on investment. Why graduate school? In general, to start in the first 2 or so years of your career, if you have a master's degree or even a higher degree, the work will be more interesting. You'll get to work on projects that are frankly more interesting than you would if you just had a bachelor's degree. Another reason to go to graduate school is you simply want to know more. You found something fascinating, you want to study it more in depth, and you feel like concentrated study in a short period of time is good. It will help you. It will and graduate school is where and school in general is where you do that kind of study. Better starting salaries. I'm going to talk a little bit about this more later. Yes, you do get more money with a master's degree, but you've got to kind of factor in all of the economic factors, not simply the fact that you're going to get a better starting salary. In the 1.5 to 2 years it's going to take you to do a master's degree, you're going to lose 1.5 to 2 years of starting engineering salary, and that can be a little hard to recoup based on the amount they're going to pay you because you've got a master's degree. Say you're starting at $65,000 a year with a bachelor's degree, you might start at $75,000 to $80,000 with a master's degree. But if it takes you 2 years to do the master's degree, you're going to lose $130,000, which you may or may not be able to recover over the course of your career. Now, that said, money is not everything. Um, Job satisfaction means a great deal. You spend a lot of your day getting ready to go to work, going to work, being at work, and coming home and coming down from work. You really don't, they can't pay you enough money to be miserable for that amount of time, 5 days a week. And so, one of the reasons not to go to graduate school is I'm tired of formal education. You may have reached the line at this point in your life. You can come back. A lot of companies will reimburse you for graduate degrees after you get a job with them. Make sure you understand this and talk to them about it in your job interviews, whether they do this or not. But if you're tired now, you might not be later, and so keep the option open, and you don't close it by not going to graduate school immediately after you've worked or after you've finished your bachelor's degree. I didn't finish my PhD until I was in my 40s, and so you can go back. It's a little painful when you're a little older because you're making more money, and it's hard to give that up for a graduate student stipend. But you don't do it for money. You don't do it for prestige. You do it because you want to learn things. You want to know more. So you may be tired of formal education, and you certainly are not going to go to graduate school just for the money. I've included a link here from a U.S. News report on return of investment on a master's degree. If you're interested or kind of on the fence about this, you might want to take a look at that article. I think it's pretty good. Okay, so graduate school elsewhere. A lot of people will say, well, you shouldn't go to graduate school in the same place that you got your bachelor's degree. There's some credence to this. Advantages of going to another graduate school is you get another experience, and I just put think adventure here. You get to go to a new place. There's also you get another perspective on your interests. You go to a new school that may not think. The researchers in your specific area, the area you're interested, may not think in an identical way to the researchers in the school that you just left. You'll see things differently. You'll come to a better understanding of what's going on. Also, more and different friends, in my opinion. This is one of the major advantages of moving to a new place now and then, is you get to meet new people. You get to see and understand people from different perspectives, which is always an interesting thing. Disadvantages, you'll notice that these perfectly reflect the advantages. You have to go to a new place. You have to go to some place you're unfamiliar. The streets, the grocery stores, the way that people talk, everything can be different. And if that is a distressing thing to you, then you might consider doing graduate school where you got your bachelor's degree. You have to learn a new system. The systems are similar because it's school, but they can be different. There can be things that you don't remember. You may find yourself in a very, very large department like Georgia Tech or something like that, where you're one small pawn in a very, very large chess game. And so that can be a consideration if those sort of things distress you. Family and friends, if you're really into your tribe, and you've been into your tribe for like the 18th generation or something like that, and your tribe doesn't leave and things like that, then friends and family might keep you in a more local environment. But these are very personal decisions, and so you have to make them based on what you want to do. I've personally enjoyed. I've lived in let's see, 5 states, and I've enjoyed every one of them in some way. There's been things that have been frustrating to me, cultural differences that have bothered me occasionally, but in general, it's fun to see and be in new places. If you're worried about seeing your family frequently, remember there are jet airplanes and the internet. And so you can still do it and still go to these new places and have adventures. And there are many nice people and very beautiful places all across the country and the world. So let's see. What I want to do is talk about graduate school at USU. This is normally Dr. Gunther comes in with Tricia Vandenberg, who's the graduate coordinator for the EC department, and they present this, but they're not here, and so I get to do it. So hopefully if my internet's still up, which it hasn't been, it's been spotty all day. One of the disadvantages of the coronavirus and having to stay home is you can't even stream good shows. Anyway, we'll see if it pops up, and lo and behold, I think it's going to do it. This is a graduate, this is on the electrical and computer engineering. You go under students and under graduate programs. You can find that you're experts at navigating the web. And this gives some pretty good information about the program and things like that. Now there are multiple degrees offered, and we're going to go through these, but the details are, you can look under these for the details of each degree. You'll notice that there's a program called a concurrent Bachelor of Science and Masters, and there's a Master of Engineering, there's an MS in Electrical, MS in Computer, there's an online Master of Engineering, and we'll talk about these degrees here. There's a dual Masters of Engineering and MBA degree, where you end up with both a Masters of Engineering and Masters of Business Administration, and there's a Doctor of Philosophy degree. So you can take a look at each one of these programs, and they're fairly well described. Just for a minute, let's take a look at the concurrent bachelor's master's degree. Now the one thing in this that you need to be aware of is you have to apply for the concurrent program by the end of your junior year, and make sure that you do that. Otherwise, it's not going to work. There are some GPA requirements. This describes what happens. What happens is when you take this degree, you're allowed to overlap a couple of courses and use them both for your Bachelor of Science and your MS degree. So this is kind of like a buy one, get one so many % off deal. A lot of students take advantage of this, particularly if they're interested. Now, you're not slave to a Master's of Engineering or anything like that, but you can take a Master's of Science degree, Plan A or Plan B, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But this is considered to be a pretty good deal. When you complete your master's degree, you will get both your bachelor's and your master's degree at the same time. If you get into the program and decide that you don't want to finish the master's degree, then all you have to do is finish up the required work for your bachelor's and you'll be given a bachelor's degree. Now, one of the things that's a real advantage of this is if you play your cards right, you can go to 2 graduation ceremonies. And I am just kidding about that. The ceremony for master's and PhD students is nightmarishly long and very difficult to listen to. But that's just me. So, okay. Let's go back to the presentation, I think. Yeah, okay. So take a look at that. You know, if you want to read it and get more information, there's more detail than I could ever give you there. But let's talk about the different degrees. Okay. Master's of Engineering. Master's of Engineering is what is referred to as a professional development degree. And what this means and what it was originally designed for was students that were working in this industry, wanted to get a master's degree, and had very specific either personal or professional goals, subjects that they wanted either to learn about new or that they wanted to go more in depth in. And so this degree was developed for them. However, anyone can apply for this if they want. This is a coursework only degree, meaning that all you have to do is complete coursework in a certain number of hours in a certain amount of time, and then you're done. Now, there is no financial aid for Masters of Engineering students. You either pay for it yourself or your employer pays for it. You may not be aware that for other graduate degrees. In general, in engineering, you don't pay for graduate school. In general, they pay you to work, and they pay and they pay your tuition. And so don't let anyone tell you that you're in a graduate program that you're going to have to pay a lot of money, because you generally don't. Masters of Engineering is the exception. In that case, you would have to pay for all of this. Okay, Masters of Engineering, Masters of Business Administration. This is a combined degree between the USU colleges of engineering and the College of Business. This one's good, particularly if you have kind of an urge to start businesses, or to become a project manager, or to work in a business in more of a business sense. This might be of interest to you. Also, Masters of Science. There are two options, Plan A and Plan B. Plan A requires a thesis. It's a research degree, and you usually work on research for a professor. Again, you'll get a living stipend, and you will get your tuition paid. And the Plan B is the same. It's not a research, it's what's called a design degree. So you work on a project where you have to do a design, sort of like a high-class senior project. And again, you will typically get a stipend, and your tuition will be covered. So those are the options for master's degrees at USU. Okay, PhD. Why would you want to do that? PhDs in general are research degrees, and specifically research degrees. You are pretty much required to have a PhD to teach at a university. But they tend to be more research oriented. My route to PhD was a little different. I worked for about 20 years in the industry and then finished my PhD. And so, and that's not usual, but it used to be that you had to have a master's degree in order you'd complete a master's degree and then continue on and complete a PhD. There are quite a few people now going straight from bachelor's degrees into PhD programs and completing PhDs. This saves you a step. You don't have to stop, write a sort of a junior thesis before your dissertation, and you just complete the dissertation and you're done. I don't have a master's degree. I have a PhD, but I don't have a master's degree, so I followed this program straight from a bachelor's to a PhD. And again, it's becoming more and more common. Where are PhDs used? PhDs are mostly in universities. There are PhDs in industry who work for research groups and things like that, but they're not the typical engineers. Typically, they would be working on kind of pie-in-the-sky problems versus where the person actually building the thing that pays the PhD salary to work on pie-in-the-sky problems will have a bachelor's or a master's degree. Okay, hopefully this bit of information has helped you. In particular, for those of you who've been concerned about the problems you have to answer, the problems are pretty simple, or the questions you have to answer on Canvas about graduate school and lifelong learning are pretty simple. Remember, their rubrics are there to help you know what to put in the answer, and so use those if they're there. If you have additional questions, general questions, you can ask myself or any professor in the department. We'll be able to help you with those questions. Specific program related questions, I'll refer you to the website, and also if you need to talk to a human being, Tricia Brandenburg is the EC graduate coordinator. Her email address is there, and you can figure out whether graduate school is for you. But remember, you love learning. That's why you're here. Hopefully we haven't beat that out of you yet. But you love learning, you love knowing things, you love being able to figure things out and solve problems. So my best to you during this time. Hopefully everyone's staying healthy and safe, and I will talk to you soon.